Welcome. This is my very first Facebook Live teaching, and I'm really delighted to be sitting here with you and to really opening up the first of these sweet invitations to explore what it means to live the way of grace. If you're here, then you already know that I have a new book coming out. It is The Way of Grace, and I'm really excited for you to read it and enjoy it and let it really serve you in walking your spiritual path with more depth and substance and support. And so this is part of that support. So I'm inviting you right now just to put aside everything and give yourself to a moment of grace. If you've worked with me before, either online or if you've attended a retreat, then you know that I always begin with some kind of practice. So let's engage that right now together. Wherever you're sitting, wherever you're listening, just attend to your posture and make sure that you're sitting in a way that's upright, where your spine's supported, preferably where your feet are on the floor. And bring your focus to the breath. Now see if you can experience your own inhale as a welcome, receiving the life-giving oxygen that arrives naturally with each inhale, as if life itself is welcoming you just to be here as you are in this moment. That you are welcomed completely in body, heart, and mind. And that the own letting go that happens with your own exhale, see if that can be a melting of resistance, a melting of any holding on that might be manifesting as unnecessary tension in your body. And on the out breath, see if you can allow the following of thoughts to melt some. Just being drawn naturally in and down to the very center of your being. As if somehow you already know the way. And that it can be as natural and as simple as breathing. Bring your awareness to the fact of your feet on the floor. And just take in that sensation that there is ground beneath your feet. And that this ground doesn't require anything from you. It's just here. It's just welcoming you to relax in this moment. And as you take in the fact of the ground, the earth under your feet, see if you can recognize that you are in and part of an unchanging ground of grace. And that all of your concerns and fears, your defensive tendencies, it can all melt into that deeper ground. You can receive the support to let go, to be here, to open. Now bring your awareness to the space above your head and around your body. Consider the possibility that not only do you rest in supportive, true ground, but that you also rest within a shower of infinite light. Just as we all receive the light of the sun that makes the day, see if you can just receive light and spaciousness itself, as if the molecules of the light contain blessings from bodhisattvas, angelic realms, subtle dimensions of light beyond conceptual understanding. That offers total love to fill your inner cup right now. Allow that grace, however you might perceive it, even if just a little, into those places inside that want transformation or healing. Allow the love, the support to lift your veils, liberate insecurity, and enter into those places that most need it. For this is our part in the transformational process. To open up towards those places that are fixed, patterned, dense, and allow the transforming presence to liberate you. And let us remember that all that we engage, all practice of any kind, is ultimately to help us abide more substantially in what we really are, and to help us to truly become more graceful human beings. So just take a couple of breaths and feel into your prayer for yourself. What you truly want. Feel also into your prayers for your loved ones, your wishes for your family and your friends to receive everything they need to flourish and heal and thrive. And let us also together open our hearts and really be with our prayers for our world. that our engagement with these Way of Grace teachings and any practices we work with may be of benefit to our world, may help in whatever ways it can to bring more truth and peace and clarity to the whole. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. So I took a look at some of the comments and questions that you posted in response to my request to share the things that are important to you, so that these Facebook Live teachings that I give might just be really meaningful and dialed in to what you're grappling with. And one of the questions that was posted I thought was a really lovely question and a great place to start because it's relevant to us all. And that question was, how do I grow authentically into my spiritual nature? This is a beautiful question, and it's a question that many of us are asking or might be asking, and that it's a question that contains within it an important thing for us to recognize, which is that at this time in our history, we have more freedom to engage the spiritual path beyond the confines of any ism than we've ever had before. And that this is a relatively recent phenomena in that even 40 years ago, our parents' and grandparents' generation, they might have experienced, tremendous ostracization had they chosen to engage spiritual teachings without a religion. So I want to speak a bit to that and what some of the benefits are to the freedom that we have to explore authentic spiritual life and practice, and what some of the traps are and how we can mitigate some of those traps so that you and I really gain traction on the path of awakening, but still maintaining the freedom to really feel into what's true for us personally. So one of the beautiful things about grace that's been very meaningful to me is that grace itself really connotates direct spiritual experience. That experience of the divine, the living presence, coming online within you and bringing forth within you what it is that you most need to live your life with meaning and depth and be real and grow and evolve. And so what I want to say is that the way of grace, in particular, is really a way that brings that focus, that brings the focus of how you and I can really be authentic to ourselves and can deepen through listening and discriminating to the innate font of truth as it manifests in each and every one of us. So this is of course, one of the big benefits of walking a path like this. But one of the things that we also need to be mindful of is there are many traps to walking a path without the formality of a religious structure with all of its rules and regulations. And one of those traps is that we can eschew any kind of structure. And that's a mistake, because one of the things that you'll see with any more conventional religious path is there's structure that makes a good deal of sense. Well, for example, there'll be an ethical structure that's right at the core of things. So, we see this in the Abrahamic religions as the 10 Commandments. If you read my book, Boundless Love, you'll know that I gave a kind of a more mystical invitation to explore those 10 Commandments in a way that was congruent with walking a mystical direct path. So, the way that they have been presented, these ethical foundations that appear as the 10 Commandments, or that appear in Buddhism or in Hinduism as ethical features that are really relating to conduct and how we go about living our life. They aren't just rules and regulations, they have very deep truths at the heart of them. That when you explore them without any kind of reactivity of like, I don't like rules, then what we see is they're really things that help us to, check and balance the tendency that we have, all egos have, to be self-centered and to live and act in ways that might be sort of spiritually juicy for us personally, but might translate into actions and ways of living that are kind of off because they have a negative impact on other people. So when we look at things like the Ten Commandments or ahimsa, non-harming, we need to meditate on it more deeply. For example, the commandment, thou shalt not kill, isn't just on an obvious physical level, because I'm sure that none of you would be interested in doing such a thing. But when we look at that, it's really an invitation to explore where we might be violent or unnecessarily annihilating to another human being in some subtle way, whether that comes through, a racist comment, whether that comes through negating someone's value because they're very different and hold very different political views to you, or whether someone's personality is just really hard to deal with. So that's also part of walking an authentic path, is to really be interested to not throw away some of these things that appear as checks and balances within the great traditions that still have important truths to offer us, even if we're not wanting to walk a religious path. They have gems of wisdom that we can meditate and reflect on and use to see how we're really doing. Are we growing and becoming less self-centered? Because that's always going to be one of the big ways that we'll tell if we're growing authentically spiritually. What will be happening is the fruits of our way of being will become more lovely, more unified, more peaceful, more graceful. Our impact on one another will be sweeter and more of a blessing. So we also want to pay attention to whether our spiritual path or not is helping us to cultivate the virtues that move us in the right direction. One of the things that has been really helpful for me personally as I've gone further and deeper in my own spiritual path is starting to recognize that in classical inner work, whether it's Gurdjieff work, whether it's mystical Christian work, whether it's inner psychological work, whether it's Sufi practice, whether it's working more deeply on any path, we'll see that, certain virtues start to show up in us. And if you've studied with me in the online programs, then you'll know that I've named some of those virtues that show up universally as things like trust, as love of the truth, as curiosity, as non-attack, which also contains within it obviously deep compassion, things like humility and willingness and patience. And so that's another way we can tell whether we're evolving or not. Are those particular virtues becoming more naturally available to us? Now, in my book, The Way of Grace, I don't present it quite in that model as the pillars of awakening, but you'll notice that throughout the book, there is, whole chapters on the cultivation of these virtues, particularly in the second section, which is about receiving the blessings of grace. Because what these virtues really do for us is they make us more fertile, they make us more receptive, they make the direct experience of what really is and who we really are more available, more obvious to us. So that makes us cleaner, clearer, more loving, more humble, more mature spiritual beings. The other thing that will be clear if we're growing spiritually is that the fruit of our practice will start to make us more peaceful. We will be feeling more settled, more fulfilled, less frustrated with life. We'll have more acceptance and equanimity. We will be more allowing of our experience, less judgmental of others. So these are also really great ways to know, is our practice producing real results for us? Those are some ways you can tell. But in order to discriminate what I'm saying, we really do need some kind of map. Because one of the traps of walking a spiritual path without the confines of a religious community and rules and the structure is that often we're walking that path alone. And inevitably, we don't always see our blind spots. And one of the blind spots is we can be picking and choosing in a way that actually serves our ego. That is really about our ego, basically trying to get some spiritual goodies to fix its problems. Now, one of the things that is really important to realize about this path that I'm offering, which actually does provide a very powerful and substantial map. When you receive the book, you will really see that I'm taking you on a journey through the 4 dimensions of grace that help to ground you in that which is deeper than your mind and help you melt some of the more dense features of your ego consciousness. Things like fear, control, judgment, defensiveness that we all have and that come with part of our historical foundation that need to melt. But in order for them to melt, we have to have some foundation. We have to open to recognize and feel directly for ourselves that we are in and part of something greater. We have to recognize that grace is the unchanging ground of our being, even though our experience changes all the time. And there's so much change going on in our world, and there probably always will be. So it is a practice to recognize that grace is our foundation and to learn to yield into it. That's what makes surrender possible. And there are practices that I share about how that can actually happen that have to do with meditation, have to do with inquiry, letting some of the obstacles to that be seen and understood and contacted with love that inevitably relate to our history, inevitably relate to some of the little macro and micro traumas we've gone through as human beings, that relate to the perceptual filters that have developed that have us not experience that we're supported, we're completely loved. So all of this has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed in a way that helps us to discriminate and understand our experience, to understand what is part of our kind of ego development and what is actually just a layer of mind. And for that requires a little more honesty. It really requires these virtues. It usually requires one another too, which is why one of my great prayers for this book is that it really helps to seed a movement of people like yourselves who really want to walk an authentic spiritual path and recognize that they need support. We all need support. And we need to give support as well, because here's a big thing to remember. There is no such thing as my awakening separate from yours. And so this is a really important thing to take in. If you really want to deepen spiritually, authentically, it's going to require you serving someone else in their awakening process. Because the whole point of this is to relax out of me-go, relax out of self-centeredness, and self-centered motivations. Now, that's not to say that you don't engage in self-care or that you treat yourself with punitively, or you don't let yourself enjoy treats and things that are helpful. But it's that we really keep an eye on the fact that the whole point of it is to really abolish that separate boundary between you and I. Because when we say my true nature, by definition, there is no your and my true nature as separate things. It would be more accurate to really say our true nature, right? So you'll notice that when one of the effects of authentic spiritual awakening is that it does break down that hard sense of boundary between what you are and I are. And that doesn't mean that we have no boundaries in or our relational life, and that we go about feeling as if everything's undifferentiated. Of course, we are all unique beings, but the fabric of our unique being is one divine fabric. And when we understand this directly from the inside, as all of the practices and the teachings I'm sharing you are designed to help you really experience the grace of our unity, then why that's so important practically is it naturally lends itself to feeling very deep love for one another, deep appreciation for one another. And it helps us to greet diversity in the spirit of wow. We see diversity with wonder, with appreciation, rather than as a threat. And so this is really helpful in our world right now, given how much fear seems to be elicited in our culture from difference, and how important it is that we break that down. So in the book, you'll notice that it's as inspiring as it is practical. And that was very deliberate on my behalf, because I'm very aware that when we're walking a path that's not a conventional path, we do actually need a map. We need something that helps us to relax, to kind of understand where our fear is coming from, what's holding it together, how our control can melt, what exactly those defenses are, and how to work with them in a way that's kind, honest, uncompromising, truth-telling, but not attacking, kind. Because any defense that you have, or that anyone has, really at the core has suffering at the root of it. And so, I provided in the book, in every chapter, both a meditation practice that is designed to help you to center more deeply, to open in your consciousness in a more subtle way to what it is that I'm speaking of, so that you can start to experience it inwardly in your own direct experience. And also an inquiry practice. So I noticed there was a question about inquiry as well, and how to know whether inquiry is for you or not. I want to clarify this, that there are a lot of teachers that teach inquiry, and the way I teach it is quite specific. But most of the time I'm giving questions. And the questions aren't for you to think about, because inquiry is not thinking. Inquiry is really entering into your direct experience. So it really is such a friend to you in walking an authentic path, because it's all about listening to what's true in you, really listening to yourself, to the grace that is in you. And so the questions are really just to serve you to listen to yourself, to listen to, see more deeply what are the obstacles for you. What are the defenses? What's the history that's blocking the way? What are the justifications for staying closed? What's that really about? And just letting that be seen, letting every question that I share with you serve that end, just to help you see more about your own inner life, bring it all to the light, and to let it be met with unconditional acceptance, which is why when we work in pairs, we only ever say to one another, thank you. We don't give advice, we just acknowledge. And so that helps us to train ourselves to recognize that grace transforms us by, touching those places that are hard, patterned, defensive. And our part in the transforming power of grace is to bring things to the light, to let them be exposed, and then not to fix it, not to figure it out ourselves. Our part is bringing everything to the light. And so in the Bible, there's this beautiful line in Paul where he says that, everything exposed to the light itself becomes light. So that is how enlightenment takes place. Our part is to bring it to the light. Inquiry helps us do that. But when it's brought to the light, we let go. We just let it be exposed. We allow space. We allow space for the mysterious presence of grace to somehow heal us, transform us, lift our veils, somehow remove our obstacles. And many of you who've worked with me know that somehow that's what happens in holistic inquiry practice. Somehow that takes place. And as things become less dense, the obstacles become more exposed to the light, they become looser, freer. What can happen then is we can journey further into our direct experience and just explore it more deeply to see what else is here beyond the obstacle. So you'll notice, if you've studied with me before, that the looping question or the last part of the inquiry is always geared towards that, towards giving you a nudge just to look deeper into your experience and see what else is there beyond the confines of your ordinary ego lens. And it's really okay what you say, there's no right or wrong in inquiry. Remember, it's about you listening to your experience and trusting the flow, the inherent intelligence that is part of your true nature that can bring forth the insights, the clarity, the clarification that is exactly what you need right now. And sometimes when we can't tell, that's a very common thing on the path, especially when we're walking a path without a conventional religious structure. We can often get to a place where, I'm not sure, am I deluding myself? Is this my fantasy? And it's really good to ask those questions and to not tense up when you don't know something, or when you're not quite sure you have the basis to discriminate what's egoic from what's essential. So one of the things that I have found so practically helpful in places like that is to pray. And this is where devotion is so important to any path, because ultimately we have to engage that flame of our heart that really loves the real thing and only wants what's real and true. And any devotional practice, whether it's chanting or prayer, helps us to really be in touch with that deeper impulse of the heart that gives us the basis to discriminate what's egoic or what's a subtle self-deception or subtle fantasy from the truth that's healing and helpful and moves us forward. So if you're not sure, you really can't tell, a prayer that I've often said that has been really great, and I've written about it in The Way of Grace, is the prayer, Beloved, if I am deluding myself and the way that I am moving, the direction I'm moving, is not in alignment with the deepest truth, please intervene in a way I can't ignore. Now you can see that even to pray a prayer like that is an expression of deep devotion and sincerity. And so my encouragement is, don't be afraid to pray a prayer like that, even a prayer like that about the best structure for your spiritual path. You might have come out of a particular tradition that said, this is the way you have to meditate, or you have to meditate at this time of day, or you have to do it for this long. Well, I'm inviting you to really feel into what's true for you, with devotion, with sincerity, and to really listen. To listen to what you can do consistently. The best spiritual practice for you is the one that is going to help you want to meditate and pray and inquire on a regular basis. So I personally have found in all my 30 years of guiding others on their path that regularity is more important than length when it comes to formal practice. So if you don't already have some kind of formal practice that includes just being quiet, just sitting in the silence in some kind of way, or just being intimate with the depth of your heart in prayer, then I would really encourage that. That will help you more than anything to really stay close to yourself and to really listen to the pulse of grace within your own soul. It's as real as putting your hand on your wrist and listening to the pulse of your blood being pumped around your body is real. So if you can, if you haven't already, then I would really recommend that you dedicate some space in your house, even if it's just a particular chair, and a time of day where it's going to be practical for you to give yourself to that inner quiet, and where you can really ask a question like, what's the truth for me in my spiritual practice right now? What practice is going to be most helpful to me now? And listen and see what comes. You may be surprised. And, I hope this will help you as you engage with the teachings in my book that I really have put a lot into and thought about very carefully based on the experiences that others I've shared with them have had. And I really hope that you will find the meditations and the prayers and the inquiries that you'll find throughout the way of grace such a good friend to you on the path, really helpful to you. And inevitably listen to yourself, because there will be some of them that will really want to become your best friends. And that's a beautiful thing, and it's going to be unique for everybody. So lastly, I just want to say that we all need friends as we walk the path, and that's one of the things that a traditional religious structure provides, is it provides community, it provides the container of others that can give us feedback, it provides the checks and balances that human relationship, can bring. And so I really encourage you through this forum here to form friendships with one another, to put a little note out to one another here on this Facebook group. Hey, I live in this part of the world. I'd really love an inquiry partner. With the technology that we have available to each other, we can meet up, we can practice together from wherever we are in the world, which I think is just extraordinarily beautiful. So I really encourage you to study this work, study these practices with your friends, and to share your experiences and to help one another ask the questions, and to invite one another to let those questions and practices enter you more deeply. And most of all, to love and befriend one another along the way. This is what we all need in order to become a more graceful human being, which is really what it's all about. So, dear ones, I am just delighted to be here with you, and I will be here with you again this time next Monday. Please tell your friends to join us, and let's spread this work together. So that is our time. And I will bow out and just offer my love. So let us just say a simple prayer together to close. Taking a couple of deeper breaths for whatever we've received here today that has been healing and helpful, meaningful and true. We give thanks. We ask for all the help possible to listen to ourselves, to be true to our deepest nature, to be unafraid, to expose any obstacle to the light, to let it be forgiven and transformed, so that we may be more beautiful, more elegant, more healing and helpful human beings in our world. May all beings be well, happy, and at peace. And so may it be.